Hello, my name is Joy, and this is Pilates Perspectives. So before we start today, why don't we just have a quick check-in, shall we? So today's check-in is breath. So wherever you are, whether you're sitting or you're standing, you're at the playground watching the kids, you're at the doctor's office waiting to be seen, let's just have you start breathing deeply in for 4 counts. Hold and exhale for 4 counts. Breathe in through your nose. Hold and out through your mouth like you're blowing out a straw. And try that a couple of times with the nose and the mouth. And as you inhale, can you imagine your soft palate lifting and your diaphragm dropping in opposition of each other? And as you exhale, they come closer together. Now let's try that one more time, and this time in through the nose and out through the nose. And you'll notice that sensation feels a little different inside your body. What are you feeling? What are your experiences? Excellent. So that's what Pilates Perspectives is all about. This is about your experience and what you're feeling as we explore the landscape of the Pilates community. And today we have Ken Endelman. Ken is the founder and CEO of Balance Body, an industry leader in Pilates equipment and education. Ken's first introduction to the Pilates world in 1976 when a customer asked him to make a custom reformer. Since then, Ken has been a strong advocate for the method, from innovating the equipment, standing up for studio owners in the 2000s trademark lawsuit, and working with experts in the field to provide comprehensive teacher training. Most people are introduced to Pilates when they take their first session, but that wasn't the case for Ken. Today, we're going to hear about how his understanding of Pilates changed from that day in the 70s and what drove him to support the field for decades to come. Welcome, Ken. All right, so our guest here with me today is Ken Endelman, and he is the CEO and founder of Balance Body. Ken, welcome to Pilates Perspective.
Thank you, and it's a pleasure to be here with you, Joy.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I'm kind of introducing you like I don't know you, but we work. Full disclosure, we work together every day. But for our guests out there, one of the first things I would like to reveal is your title. I know we call you CEO. We also call you lots of other things, but
Yeah. And I've heard a lot of other things too. Yes, yeah.
But what is your unofficial title?
My unofficial title is CEO and really nice guy.
Really nice guy.
Yeah, really nice guy. And the really nice guy came more recently because after being just a nice guy for so long, I decided I needed to give myself a promotion. So I promoted myself to a really nice guy.
Right. So now your letters behind your name are RNG.
RNG.
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
Yes.
You keep this up for another 50 years, you might make it to RRNG. Really, really nice guy.
Really?
So for those who don't know you out there, let's talk a little bit about Pilates and what Pilates means to you. So can you categorize what Pilates has brought into your life?
Ooh, good question. It's brought a lot to my life and a lot that I never expected. So never, not just didn't expect, but never even imagined.
Let's elaborate on that.
Okay.
Where did you start? How did this start?
So I started my last job that I had before I got into Pilates. I was making waterbeds on Melrose Avenue in Hollywood.
Right. And when was that?
That was in 1975 or maybe
1975.
76. I'm not exactly sure because back in those days it didn't matter.
Right. I'm picturing you with the hair and the mustache. Did you have the beard at the time?
I didn't have a beard. I did have a mustache. It was darker, and I had curly,
You were
dark,
like full
dark
Burt
hair.
Reynolds.
Well, not quite. I actually knew Burt Reynolds, but no. So no, not quite.
Okay, so you're in Hollywood. You're making waterbeds.
Mm-hmm. Making waterbeds. A lady comes in. She had been a customer before, and she came in, and we had built this table for her. So she said, I want you to make this apparatus thing for me.
Mm.
And I was always looking for work, but I was never really looking for work that hard because everybody that came into my store at that time was always promising me either, fame, fortune,
Right, Hollywood
yeah,
in the 70s.
yes,
Yeah,
yes, yeah, yeah.
Um, okay, so this woman walks in. That sounds like a joke, but a woman walks into your waterbed store and asks for an apparatus.
Right.
Right.
Asked me if I could make this thing because we had made this table for her. And actually, I was not the one that actually made the table for her. My wife's cousin, who worked for me, her name is Mimi, made this Parsons table for this customer, who she really liked it, and it came out really nice. And then she thought that because my cousin made this for her, that I could make a Pilates machine for her.
Mm.
So.
And your first reaction to making this thing?
Well, I put her off at first.
Yeah.
I mean, I was interested a little bit because I didn't want to turn down the opportunity to make money, but I put her off because, it's just another stupid, lame idea in Beverly Hills, and it was like, why do this thing? So I put her off and just made excuses, and then she kept on coming back, wanting to know, well, when am I going to do it?
Ah, she pinned you down.
She finally got angry with me. She said, well, when can you do it?
Yeah, she gave you a deadline.
She gave me a deadline, and I've learned to live with deadlines. But back then I wasn't so crazy about deadlines.
Uh-huh.
So what happened was I said to her, well, maybe I'll have some time next month. And she said, well, when next month? And I said, well, I looked at back in those days you had calendars on your watches. I looked at my watch and I said, well, it's like the 28th of this month. How about like the 29th of next month? And she said, okay, we've got a date. And then I forgot about it. But then she calls me on the 28th and she said, are you going to show up tomorrow? And at that point, I ran out of excuses and I had to do it.
Right. And the rest is sort of history, as they say.
Mm-hmm.
And so from that moment until now, you discovered what Pilates was.
Mm-hmm.
From a single reformer, you just kept going. What did discovering Pilates truly just bring to you personally?
At the first, really not much, I have to say. It was just a job. It was just making a machine, right?
Mm.
But then, and the lady that introduced me to this, her name was, well, at that time it was Janine Bowen, and now it was Issa Bowen. But she realized real quickly that if I was going to make this equipment, I needed to really understand how it worked. So it wasn't just a matter of building a machine with a carriage that goes back and forth and some straps. It was like, what do all these things do? What's the purpose of them? And why are they so important?
Mm.
So it was her idea. She said, well, maybe you need to take a Pilates lesson. And so I agreed. So so I decided, and it was free though. That was a good thing. So so I decided to take some lessons from her, and she it was crazy because I was using muscles that I didn't know that I had. I was being worked out harder than I ever thought that I could. I thought this would be like a piece of cake, but it's just not true.
Had you heard of Pilates, beforehand?
No way. In fact, I didn't even know what Pilates. So not only had I heard about Pilates, it was actually more of a secret at that point.
Right.
Yeah.
Because the studios were hard to find; they were obscure. You had to come across somebody who knew somebody who knew somebody.
It was the Kim Lee studio, right?
Yeah.
It was the Ron Fletcher studio, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was the names of the studios were the people that ran the studios. It was the Stephen Free studio, right? That's how it was. So I needed to find out. It was important to find out what Pilates was because I was trying to find out if I was going to make this equipment, was there any patents on it, right? Well, I can't check who the inventor is if I don't know who the inventor is, right?
Right.
So I kept on asking questions, and they said, well, there's this guy named Pilates, and he's dead now. And now his wife is still there, but she's really not doing much. So, there's not much happening. So I had the name Pilates.
Were there active patents on the reformer? So somebody comes to you, they say, make this reformer, you build a custom reformer. You had to go and measure that against something.
Yeah.
Where did you find a reformer to measure against?
Well, there's actually two answers to that question. So the first answer to the question is that I went to the studio and took measurements. And then I went to another studio. I went to Robert Wagner and Natalie Wood's house in Beverly Hills.
You just knocked on the door?
No, I went there. Yeah, I said, hey, Ken's here, man. How you doing, dude? No, what happened was this. I went there with Kim Lee, and Kim Lee showed me the reformer,
Mm-hmm.
and he said, and I said, well, really, it would be cool if I could just take this back to my shop and I could measure it there. And so he called. It wasn't even, he didn't call like Natalie or Robert over, but it was the housekeeper. And he said, can we take this over and can we just do some maintenance on it and clean it up and we'll bring it back in 2 days? And they said, sure. So we just loaded it up and put it into my van and I took it back to Northridge and started working on it.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So I've always been curious about this, Ken. So as somebody who comes from a craftsman's point of view,
Mm-hmm.
you're exposed now to Pilates, you take a class, you experience, you're working muscles that you
Mm-hmm.
hadn't worked before, and now you're creating this machine, and there has to have been a marriage in the thought process of the exercise form and the machine that you were creating
Mm-hmm.
to be the most effective and efficient.
Mm-hmm.
What was that whole sort of like almost mind melding for you of, yes, this woman wants me to make this thing,
Mm-hmm.
to actually caring about what it was you were making it for?
It was kind of a, it was like I'm not a person that has a lot of epiphanies, but this was an epiphany. So I'm working on this equipment and I'm trying to figure out why the reason is that it is and why it does what it does and what's so good about it. And then I realized at some point that this was kind of a mechanical interpretation of kind of reciprocal movements, what bodies do, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then start looking at a body, and a body is like, it is the most incredible machine. I mean, we all strive to make it, I mean, if you look at equipment in general and stuff, it's all these things are just ways that people are trying to manufacture something that's as good as how we see, how we hear, how we move, right?
Right,
All these levers and tendons and elastic members that are inside our bodies. It's pretty incredible stuff, right?
right.
And the reformer actually does a lot of that stuff, or it actually creates an environment where you can do kind of oppositional movements to those things or simulate those movements. And so once I started realizing that's kind of was the essence of Pilates equipment, it made it a lot easier to start building it.
All right. So many people, it takes them many, many years to come to some level, similar level of understanding. How did you come to that level of understanding so quickly about the human body and the equipment and how the human body and the equipment interact?
Once you look at what the machine does, right? And then you have to ask yourself, well, why does this machine do what it does, right?
Mm.
What was the goal of the person that invented this machine? Now, I look back at it in retrospect and think that, Pilates worked with what he had, and he probably had an idea of what he wanted to build and stuff, but he basically, had bed frames and he had
Right,
elastic
right,
members and he had
right,
weights and things like that.
right. He
So
used what was available.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And he kind of figured, if you're going to strengthen your core, you better figure out a machine that can strengthen your core and how to exercise it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think the glory of the reformer is that it can strengthen your core, but it can still stabilize your torso.
Right.
So it kind of gives you the latitude to move in all different directions.
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating when you think about the inventor, Joe the inventor, and the practicality of what he was creating for his methodology,
Mhm.
right? And then looking at recreating that is a real challenge because you did it without really having the understanding of a teacher at the time, or even having a teacher who was helping you at the time. But over the years, uh, the equipment has changed.
Mhm.
The functionality, the availability, the accessibility has changed, and it's very comfortable for users, today's user. Can you tell me who has influenced you from those early days to the balanced body that we know of today, and who may have provided some insights that have influenced the way you've engineered and looked at the equipment?
I mean, I think it's really kind of interesting. There's actually two different directions on that one. So I think the people that have influenced me the most on how to kind of the direction to take the equipment are the teachers that I work with. It
Mm.
goes back to working with Issa Bone and and Kim Lee and Wanda Bouvier and then Astrid de Wilde and then Stephen Fries and and then to a huge degree Elizabeth Larkham and Brent Anderson and stuff. And then at the same time I had the opportunity. This is kind of really a cool thing. I didn't even know it at the time, but to know Carola Trier, to know
Mm.
Bruce King, to know have taken classes with Romana Krzyzanowska, to work with almost all the people that study with Joe.
Right.
I
So
don't want
for
to say almost all because there's always some more people that pop up here. But
Right. So for those who are listening, so all the names, many of the beginning names are, original teachers of the method. And then the second half are all many of the elders, considered the elders today. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
yeah, but so then when I was introduced to these people at the beginning, it was kind of tough because they didn't really take me seriously, and they were trying to fix whatever I was doing wrong, right? So, but at the end of the day, they were actually really generous with their time. I mean, I used to have these long conversations with Eve Gentry, right, and she would explain to me, why it was important to have spring tension and why springs worked so good, and how come spring resistance on muscles was one of the best types of resistance that you could possibly have,
Oh
right?
gosh, what I wouldn't give to have that be part of that
Yeah, right.
conversation. That's
Yeah,
fantastic.
so it was just amazing. And then you talk to other people, and they have a whole other perspective on what's going on. And then what's really interesting too with a lot of these guys is just how creative they are.
Uh,
We seem it's really kind of interesting. You kind of you grow and you realize you had this not I was gonna say premonition. That's not the word, but you make generalizations about people, right?
right.
We all do that,
Yes, of
right?
course.
And
Yes.
then you think, okay, well, this is just an exercise person. What do they know, right? And then all of a sudden you understand that these guys are genius when it comes to being movers. And then you start to study like Joseph Pilates. This guy was phenomenal because he
Right.
was an entrepreneur. He was a mechanical genius. He was a movement person, right? He had ambition, right? He was going to have to change the world. It's a pretty amazing guy.
And in terms of articulating to you, it sounds like you did it in two ways. You did it with yourself taking classes,
Hmm.
and you also did it by listening,
Hmm.
right? That's one of the hallmarks, I think, of who
Yeah.
you are as a
Yeah.
CEO, hence the really nice guy moniker.
Yeah.
Um, uh, is there any one voice that in retrospect you wish you heard more, you had a little more time with?
Ooh, good question. Um, That's really interesting. But I want to say right away is that my father used to always say that you don't learn anything when your mouth is open. So, so and I really believe that. Um, y- you know, um, I think it would have been really. I mean, first of all, I wish I was when I had the time with all these elders. It was really early in my career,
Mm,
and I really didn't really appreciate who they were and what they had to say and what they were offering. Because my awareness of Pilates and what it was all about was in its really early infancy, right? Now it's my late infancy, but then it was my early infancy. So, so I think if I was a little bit smarter back then, actually a lot smarter, then it would have been really nice to spend time with more time with Eve Gentry and especially Kathy Grant, because I think both of those guys had a lot to offer, and I just didn't get a time. I got to spend a lot more time with Ron later on when I
right.
could appreciate who he was, but not with those guys.
Oh, interesting. So let's get you through the 70s, and then let's get to the point where you decide, okay, this Pilates thing, which um, for all you guys listening out there, full disclosure, I often chuckle to myself that if I was in, it was the mid 70s and I had a choice between making reformers or water beds, I would have thought the money was on the waterbed. You took the gamble on the reformer, and the rest is, as we say, history. But let's just fast forward a little bit. Uh, at some point in this, a community starts to develop, the Pilates community. Can you articulate, or have you thought a lot about how Pilates affects the individual? And then how that affects the larger like state of the community or sort of culture of the Pilates community.
I think it's a big question. It's a really big question, because I think that in the at the lowest level, Pilates really improves your health, right?
Mm.
And if you can improve somebody's health and their mobility, it really creates tremendous opportunity for them to move throughout society in so many ways because their attitude's more powerful, right? That positivity, that freedom, it kind of emanates from people, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
if they're feeling good about themselves and they're feeling good about their health, right? And it makes people want to just get better.
Right.
And as opposed to like when they're not feeling good, they just don't want to do anything but sit on the couch. And I think too many people in the world right now want to sit on the couch. And I think Pilates totally had it right. If people would get off the couch, right? If they would walk around, and if they would do the things that human beings were designed to do, then their perspective towards life would improve. I mean, Pilates actually thought that you could have world peace if people were doing Pilates, right? I don't know if you could take it that far, but I think he was in the right direction. I think if people feel good about themselves,
Mm.
and and they're gonna act better. They're gonna be much more positive about life, and it's gonna affect everybody else.
Right. You show up in a more positive space, and you have something positive to offer, and in a way, itself is infectious.
Right. It's constructive. It's
Right.
positive. Those are the two best things that are out there, right?
Right,
Yeah.
right. And it's engaging with life,
Mm-hmm.
which, by the way, is where all modern research
Mm-hmm.
is on health and well-being. It has more to do with engagement and showing up
Mm-hmm.
and being active than it does with any particular number of repetitions or, how much weight you're pushing or pulling. And I think that's very exciting because the conversation shifts to wellness.
Mm-hmm.
And Pilates slots into that wellness place really, really lovely. Post-COVID, we've seen a huge change in that. Have you thought about why that might be?
I mean, part of it's black and white. Part of it is that the people that were not in good health when COVID hit us are the ones that are no longer around anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people noted that. And I think that's one of the reasons why Pilates is just so crazy right now is because people came out of COVID doubling down on the importance of their health and how important it was for them to take care of themselves. And then they start looking at what's the best way to take care of myself, right? And then the thing that kind of percolates to the top right now is, all you can really do to do good things for your health is you can eat better, right? You can exercise and you can sleep, right? Some has to do with your genes, I'll say that for sure, right? But if people got to pick an exercise modality or some way to exercise or some way to get fit or some combination, which I'm not going to say that Pilates is the only way to get fit, right? There's a lot of ways, right?
Right.
But
Sure.
but typically, if you can put Pilates into that mix, that recipe, you're going to have a really positive outcome.
Right, which is, I think, one of the things that I have always been attracted to about Pilates is that you could fit it into the mix
Mm-hmm.
and that it becomes sort of this lovely sort of base, right, upon which you can do all the things you're looking to do in your life,
Yeah.
right? It's become more universal in a way,
Mm-hmm.
which, according to Joe's writings, was one of his goals all along, was that it was going to be on the tip of
Yeah.
everybody's tongue. And here we are now. It literally is.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, you can't really say if that positivity and that nurturing comes from Pilates or it comes from the people that practice Pilates, which one, but it's there, right?
mhm.
And it's a really powerful kind of positive pressure that it just puts on the community because you're around a whole bunch of people that love what they do with a bunch of people that love practicing what they're doing, and it's just that positivity just generates so much more goodwill and so much more positive energy.
I love it. The positive pressure.
Positive pressure.
I always say when I train that nothing changes without a little tension,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And we think of tension as a negative, but actually it's a real positive. So that positive pressure or that positive tension
Mm-hmm.
you put that into a whole community of people and voila, you get just this sort of this wonderful power of intention
Mm-hmm.
in a way
Yeah.
that's spectacular. Can I back you up for a second?
Sure.
All right. So we talked about your first reformer. I want to kind of just quickly, because we're going to touch on this in another episode, but I do want to talk about that really murky period of time. I would say before the turn of the century, like in the
back in the olden days.
back
Yes.
in the old days,
Yeah.
before the trademark
Mm-hmm.
was broken.
Mm-hmm.
You want to talk about pressure. You were getting some negative pressure at that point. I know for you guys listening out there, when I opened my studio, I called it Bodywise Pilates Studio, and the very first thing that happened was I went to my mailbox all excited, and my first piece of mail addressed to me in my business,
Hmm.
and it was a cease and desist order, which I promptly filed away and ignored. Thankfully, I had no idea that in the background there was a lawsuit that was being filed. Just quickly, like what made you decide to stand up for the Pilates community that way?
Um, there was a lot of things, but the thing that really made me want to go to bat um, was the guy that was filing these lawsuits was picking on small mom and pop studios, and this is a one person studio. This is like Marie Jose Blum when she was working by herself, right? This is Mary Sue Corrado, who had a little studio up in Denver, and he started suing these guys, and they just wanted to agree and go away and just go on with their lives, right? But he made it so onerous. He made it so hard for them to settle and get out of this thing, and made it cost them so much money to do that that it just kind of turned my stomach. And I just thought a guy like that has no business having any control over the Pilates world.
I mean, I think that that's it's a story that I don't know that many people today coming into the Pilates industry know. Right, Pilates has now become a term of art, if you will. It means more than just a methodology. It's a full form of exercise. It powers many professions and careers. So to think that it really sort of started with like, sort of wanting to put some positive pressure
Hmm.
into the system, I think that's really sort of an exciting turning
Hmm.
point.
Yeah.
And not only did it make so now people like myself can call themselves a Pilates instructor. It made equipment more available.
Hmm.
And then now we start to see the rise of studios, larger studios, more pervasive studios everywhere popping up. And that was a really exciting time in the early 2000s when Pilates was really starting to be seen. When you think back on those days, I would imagine that growth probably seemed crazy to you.
It was crazy at that point, right? It was crazy because um, we were like handed things that most people dream of, right?
Hmm.
I mean, all the free publicity that Pilates got was amazing. And the thing that to remember about, I think the reason why we got all that free publicity was because number one, the media could say we're Pilates, but the people practicing Pilates couldn't, right?
Yeah, right.
So
Yeah, yeah,
that was kind of crazy.
that was nuts.
That was nuts, right? But then the other thing too is that it really works so well, right? So we got all this for publicity, but also because nobody owned it, right?
Uh-huh.
I mean, if you're writing a story about, say, Coca-Cola, right, then you're just helping Coca-Cola, right?
Right,
But if you write a story about Pilates, it helps everybody in the Pilates world, right?
right.
It's really the craziest thing because it's a brand that we all own.
Right, it's a universal brand that is available to everyone now,
Hmm.
but it wasn't. What was that sentence we were supposed to use on our business cards that we were instructors of the
You were instructors of the exercise technique originated by the historical concepts of Joseph H. Pilates.
right, really sexy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
that
that was before there was indexing, there was before the internet.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So that had to be on your shingle, your business card, in your yellow pages, but you weren't allowed to have a yellow page category for Pilates. It was under
Yeah.
exercise.
That was a recipe for growth in an industry, don't you think?
Absolutely.
Um so looking back then at the 2000s and the rise in the 2000s,
Hmm.
to me it mirrors in obviously in a different way, proportionally it's quite different, but it mirrors what we're seeing today. Um, what are your hopes for the future now of Pilates, given sort of this moment that we're having?
It gets back to what I just mentioned, the brand Pilates,
Mm.
and we've all inherited this incredible brand. So, for those people out there that aren't marketing people, the brand is people's emotional attention and emotional, sorry, emotional relationship with the object or a company, right?
Right.
And so when people say Pilates, they think of positive things, right? They think of health, they think of nutrition, they think of movement, right? They when people walk into a Pilates studio, they already have bought into the idea that Pilates is a good thing. Now they're just looking for the best way to get it, right? The best way for them. So I think that that's an amazing thing. So the next question really becomes is that when you inherit something like that, is how not to screw it up, right?
How not to screw it up.
How not to screw it
Yeah,
up,
yeah.
right? Ponder this for a second. I mean, Pilates has been around for now over 100 years, right?
Yep,
If it
100
was a
years.
stupid fad, it would have been gone 99 years ago, right?
Mhm.
And so it's stuck around this long. It survived. It survived the 1990s. It survived, 2008, 2009. It just grows and it grows and it grows because it's such a good thing, right? And so the question really is you got this thing now. We've got it. How not to screw it up? So we have to really understand what Pilates is and how to grow it in a really positive way, which means not to be negative about it. Like back in the old days, I used to always hear studios say, "Well, down the street they break people and then they come back to me and I fix them."
Uh-huh.
That's BS, right? That you need to like that. That's like old school thinking, and we should leave that back in the Civil War, right? What we really need to be thinking about now is how to preserve it and how to keep making it better. That's kind of the spirit of Joe Pilates. He kept on improving things his whole lifetime. He improved his technique. He improved his equipment. We need to figure out how to make it better, how to make it more effective. So when customers walk out of the Pilates studio, they tell their friends, and the friends come back to the studios.
Now, I'm sure that there's a lot of people out there who are saying amen to that. So as you're saying that, Ken, I'm going back to your first comment about taking the reformer home and then taking a lesson and figuring out how to make a reformer and how to not just do justice to making a reformer, but making a reformer that does it well, does
Mm-hmm.
it better.
Mm-hmm.
How do we do that? How do we know? This is a question that keeps coming up.
Mm-hmm.
How do we know? How do we know the next steps toward keeping that sense of taking the slow march over 100 years to its natural progression and next step when we're in the midst of a Pilates tsunami?
Good question. I mean, the very first thing is you have to appreciate why we're here,
Hmm.
and that's because of our customers. So we have to make sure that no matter what, we do what's the very best thing for the customer. We put ourselves in their shoes, what's the best thing for them day in and day out, because doing that means the customers are going to go out and they're going to talk about Pilates.
That's right.
That's
right.
that's the first thing. The second thing is in our world right now, we spend so much time thinking about, oh, how can I get the biggest dividend fastest, right? what's my ROI on this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is it, nobody's sitting around waiting for they don't think about anything like when you have kids, right? You think about, what can I do now so that my kid has the best opportunity of succeeding in high school and the best opportunity of getting to college or the best opportunity and you're thinking 20 years down the line, right?
Right.
But we don't think about that in regards to almost everything else. Everything else is immediate gratification, right?
Yeah.
So if you spend the time with your client focusing on the long term, which is you do it in a lot of different ways, right? It's not just how you're teaching them to do the exercises now, but basically how to walk their walk in their daily life, right? How to translate those moves that you learn in Pilates to your daily life, right? And so that makes so much more difference. It's like getting them to do their homework for free, right? It's like, but that's the stuff that gets them coming back, right? It's not always the easy route, right?
Yeah.
It's like talking to them. And then the other thing that's really important too is that, you need to people need to understand, this is more about preserving Pilates, but people have to understand the path of Pilates, right? What's what's it going to be like as you're on the road of doing Pilates, and how it's going to get better, and how a good Pilates instructor is going to formulate your sessions based on your level of skill and where you're going and then what you're trying to do, right? Because some people, they just may want to have a better golf swing, right? Some people may just want to be back free, right? But guess what? If you're smart, you can teach them how to not to have a bad back in the first place, right?
Or how not to have a bad back in the future.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So I think those things are really important. And then this is a smaller thing, but everybody loves stories. So why not tell people the story of Pilates and tell them the story about yourself too? I mean, people want something they can talk about going forward. And then the other thing too, which I always hard fought, because people would say, how do you define Pilates, right? It's really hard to define what Pilates is, right? And it always turns out for most people, well, you just got to try it and find out how it works, and and you'll see it works really good, and so that makes Pilates really good, right? But a Pilates instructor can help you define what these movements are doing and how they're translating in a way that you can explain it to your clients. Now I'm talking about marketing right now, right?
Uh-huh.
But you need to explain that to your clients so that they can explain it to their friends, so that they become customers. And it's got to be something a little bit more than just saying, try it and you'll really like it. That works really good, right? But if they have an expectation, and they can grow into the expectation, you're going to get much better outcome.
This episode is powered by Balanced Body. Balanced Body is dedicated to delivering world-class Pilates teacher training to instructors at every stage of their careers. Our nationally recognized instructor training programs combine traditional Pilates principles with the latest in movement science, ensuring you receive the most comprehensive education available. Whether you're new to teaching or looking to expand your knowledge, we offer courses that inspire growth, foster community, and elevate your practice. Ready to take your Pilates career to the next level? Discover more about our training programs at pilates.com/Pilates-certification, or go to Pilates.com and click on the Learn button. So everything you're saying makes perfect sense to me. We're totally aligned here, but we're in a moment. We're in a moment where Pilates is now intersected. So this slow march toward time that has been, with its little peaks and valleys, just going up and up and up for the last 100 years, is intersected by this intense moment of lots of Pilates, lots of reformers, lots of stuff everywhere. And that value add, that's Pilates that you're talking about right now, like that's the piece that keeps me up at night. It's how do we keep that value add there? How do we keep telling the story in such a way that it creates just enough curiosity for if somebody comes through a class and has a moderate and okay experience and thinks, well, maybe I did Pilates, or I don't want to do it again.
Yeah.
To make them say, rethink and try it again. How do we keep that little bit of fire in there?
I think it's really important for customers to know that Pilates comes in different flavors, and to be a little bit careful in terms of what people call as Pilates. Maybe do a little bit of research to find out where Pilates came from and what makes Pilates, and understand that this is just not 10 exercises, that only 10 exercises that you do. And, it's not a piece of cake. It really is a lifestyle. And it's just how it can infinitely improve along with you. So that when somebody has experience and they have a bad experience in a bad class, and by the way, they might have a bad experience and even with a really good instructor, right?
100%.
It can just be a bad day.
I want to be really clear. It has nothing to do with whether it's a class or a private session.
Yeah.
It's just, everybody, this is so much about a personal experience, right?
Yeah.
And you have to find the right experience for you. So I just want to put that on record.
But we all know that you're not going to make everybody happy all the time, right? Can't do it. So you got to focus on the people that you can make. You just do the best job that you can, and be willing to admit your mistakes and pick yourself up and go forward again when something doesn't go well.
Yep.
But because the good will outweigh the bad, and I think that'll happen, globally too. I think that if people just keep their heads down and they work hard and they do a really good job and they get smarter about what they're doing and they're always training to get better, that's going to survive. And the people that are doing the lousy work, they're just going to fade away.
Right. Interesting. You said, I'm trying to remember your words, that it's not about 10 exercises, and that it's a lifestyle. It's a lifestyle. You want to elaborate on that?
Well, I mean, it's a lifestyle because, if you're just taking an exercise class, right? You're going to exercise your muscles, you're going to stretch, right? You're going to, you might write some imbalances and stuff like that, right? But if you go home and you just sit on the couch for the next 9 hours, that's almost wasted energy,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
But if you're thinking about what you're doing in class and you're translating into what you're doing during the day, then it changes how you sit. It changes how you walk. You start thinking about your steps, right?
Right.
And
It
I'm not talking
changes
just
your own
yeah.
experience of yourself.
It does.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah,
Right.
for
Yeah.
sure.
And it makes a huge difference. And so that's the part of the lifestyle, and it's really the kind of the attention to like what you're putting into your body, right? So it's
Mm.
not just how you're working and exercising, but like what are you even eating, right? And so because you can always improve on that stuff too, right?
Right. So the
Yeah.
positivity is not only outward positivity, how you show up in the world,
Right.
but it's inward,
Yeah.
right? How you experience yourself.
Yeah. And guess what? Positive people like to be around other positive people.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
there we go. And there's the part where that leads to world peace, I think.
I
Come full circle.
you know.
Hey, I'd be remiss if we didn't talk about innovation,
hmm
right? I think one of the things that I've enjoyed the most about working with you is how you can see something through many different lenses and sort of always look at potential. Um, Innovations like the infinity footbar, for example,
hmm
on a reformer, right?
hmm
Uh, when you're looking at ideas,
hmm
what are the ideas? The connector, for example.
hmm
What are the ideas that inspire you?
Um, I mean, you mentioned two examples, like the infinity footbar. That idea originally came from Brent Anderson, and we were like looking at how the original reformers were built,
Mhm.
and I always thought that it was, I guess I can say, it's kind of stupid that when you're trying to lift the footbar up higher for a taller person, because of the way that it rotates, it also gets closer to that person, right? And I'm thinking, well, that person that needs the higher footbar also has a longer femur, so he really needs to have it higher and further from him, not higher and closer, right?
Mhm.
So then the exercise is, well, how do I make it go, higher and further rather than, and then shorter and closer, right? And so then it was like, how do you design something? And then it gets the process going. Okay, let's figure this out. How can we get this thing to translate in two directions? And that was the beginning of the clinical footbar, and that later became the infinity footbar.
Oh,
And that was
fantastic.
just an idea.
Yeah. And you came up with that idea, you and Brent?
Brent came up with the idea of figuring out a way where, he wanted to figure out a way where if you put a child on a reformer, you could get it closer to them without making it higher. Because now,
Oh.
just picture putting a little kid, and with the infinity footbar, you can move it really close
You
to the
can move
carriage
move it
and lower
closer.
it.
I
And
see.
so
I
now,
see.
but the same exact logic applied to somebody that was taller, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. If it worked for a kid,
yeah,
it'll work for someone who's
yeah.
taller. Yeah.
But
In
but
reverse.
but the other problem is with the old original reformers is that when you lifted it up closer, you're actually moving it closer to the carriage, right? And so now you were in some ways limiting. You had the same amount of carriage travel, right? But it wasn't appropriate for the size person, right? You needed for a taller person to have more travel.
Right.
You know.
And in that regard with innovation,
hmm
at what point, like when you're looking at innovating, we're just talking about Pilates, like there's a fine line between innovating and then stepping way outside the
hmm
scope,
hmm
if you will. What's that sort of thought process in your mind
hmm
when you're weighing and measuring innovation?
I think it's whenever you do something different, you're always going to have people that say, why change it? Because it works so well, right?
Mm,
I mean, let's face it, the Pilates Reformer, this is a design that's 100 years old, right?
right.
And actually, it's 125 years old now almost. So, it's been around for a long time. And so why would you change it, right? But this is the thing. We've learned a lot more since Joe was around. I mean, Joe is a genius. Joe, I could never believe how smart that guy was. And this goes back to generalizations and stuff like that. I always think back in the older days, everybody was stupid, right? So, I mean, how could they have thought of this stuff? But at the end of the day, I mean, they were inventing airplanes back in the olden days, right? They actually were smart. I just kind of had to realize that. But you have a guy like Joe, who again, who was was a mechanical genius, was an entrepreneur, was a body worker, and all those things, right? So far ahead of his time,
So
right?
far ahead of his time.
He was, even by the time he died, he was still ahead of his time, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So it's just kind of amazing. But you have to figure out, what's really going to help your clients do a better job, right? Because our business is really kind of funny. It's really the people that buy our equipment are the instructors, right? But our real clients are the customers that are using their equipment, right?
100%.
So we have to figure out, at the end of the day, think through our instructors to what the client's experience is going to be like. And that's how we make our decisions as to whether the change is appropriate or not.
Yeah. I think that's really important, that at the end of the day, it's the client. We always say the client is what's sticky, right?
Mm-hmm.
That after Joe died, it was the client who kept it alive. It's the clients inside of the studio every day. And it's so we hear a lot from instructors, but it's the client experience that you always have to keep at the heart of everything. So every change, every thought process toward the client.
Yeah. That's the thing that you and I and everyone around us and all our customers have in common, is that we all work for the client.
That's right. That's right. Let's move a little bit to the actual making of the reformer, right? So in the early days, you had a lot of input from around you, but you still had to take this thing and make it work, right? You had to craft it,
Mm-hmm.
right? Well, how did you do that? Like, and now you have a big factory. What did you have back then?
Well, back then I was sharing a public storage space.
A public storage space? You were allowed to have like electricity and like saws and sanders and all those things?
Kind of. I was lucky.
What's the statute of limitations on this? Is California going to come after us when they listen to this?
I come after anything. but no. So I was in a public storage place, and I was making water beds in this public storage place, and in fact, the guy's name was Emilio.
Emilio,
the manager of the public storage place in Chatsworth, California. And as long as he kept places rented and nobody complained, he didn't really care what happened. And also, I think his life was kind of boring, so he was kind of happy to have people around there that he could talk to. But he was actually, we told him what we were going to do, and we moved, from my garage into this public storage place. And he actually let me, my saws worked on 220. That meant I had to have two 110 currents. So 110 circuits. So he actually let me take the 110 circuit from the unit next to mine and match it to the one that I had.
The story gets better and better every time I hear it.
So I had a 220 circuit, and then I could run my saws, and everything else was just 110. So that worked out fine. And then, we stayed there.
You were the original, like, in the garage, right? You make your big move into a storage unit. Yeah. You're borrowing the electricity from next door.
Right.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Fantastic.
Yeah. And there were all these other guys that were running little businesses out of, there was a guy named David Brzezinski who sold metric screws, right? He sold clothing. There was another guy that sold metric screws down the way, right? And then there was another guy down there named Ed Rubottom who fixed cars, right? And so Ed and me ended up moving public storage into a big 1,200 square foot place. And he had the front 600 feet and I had the back 600 feet. So he was fixing cars in the front and I was making water beds and exercise machines in the back.
All right, just for scale, so 600 square feet. What are we at now?
We are in both buildings now, right?
Yeah.
We will be at 235,000 square feet.
So somebody out there do the math.
Yes.
How many square feet is
that?
That's
200 times.
Oof.
200 times, right?
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Actually, 400 times.
All right. So he was doing cars in the front, and you were making reformers in the back.
And his business didn't last, but mine did. And so I ended up taking up his space.
All right, so again, water beds are out. The car business is out. But reformers keep growing.
Reformers keep growing. Right. And so, but it was so cool there because now I'm making water beds in this one place, and I start making Pilates equipment. I bring this reformer back to the shop. And this is like a little incubator space, and this is on Parthenia in Northridge, and which is Sacramento Valley for those people that don't know Los Angeles. Um, and my neighbors are really cool. So my neighbors are this sheet metal company called Walker Industries Sheet Metal, right? And it was run by these two biker guys and their dad, and they knew everything about metal fabrication and welding and bend allowance and all the stuff that I didn't know. And they were happy and delighted to answer my questions and to work with me, right, and share information. They were, in a lot of ways, these guys that, to look at them, you would think the last thing they would want to do is nurture and help anybody, right? And they were like the warmest, nicest guys in the world. And then across from them, there was this guy named Miguel Vidal, and Miguel was a cabinet maker who came from Mallorca, Spain, and then he went to Brazil, and in Brazil he actually he carved out the woods to stamp out fenders for cars. So just imagine carving out an inner mold and outer mold with the thickness of a piece of sheet metal in between that comes together, stamps out a fender, right?
Oh, that sounds an awful lot like
Yeah.
the rails of an A2.
Yeah, but the deal is he made um, he made machinery out of wood, right?
Uh-huh.
And so when you think about this, how important that was, because anybody can make a table or a chair, right? But when you start making a machine and you've got somebody sliding back and forth on this and they weigh up 200 pounds or more than that, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a whole different range of forces on the machine than just building a table or a couch or something like that, right? And so, and this guy was genius. I mean, he was actually so well trained, he could make plane irons out of car leaf springs, and he could make chisels out of files, right? So this is how old school this guy was. And he's like telling me, this is how you do this, Ken, and this is how you do that, Ken. And then a friend of my wife's family was this guy named Bram Lieber, and he taught industrial design at UCLA, and he would just sit around and say, well, Ken, what about this? And what about that? Or have you thought about this? Or why aren't you doing it this way, right? And it was like being around all these guys that were so
It's
helpful.
like a early think tank in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways. And
some kind of an artisan enclave.
But they were so easy to talk to. And of course, if they needed anything from me, I would do anything I could for them, right? But
so you found yourself in really this in sort of that infancy of the business, in this lovely space where you were influenced by all these other craftsmen around you.
it sounds romantic.
It sounds romantic. And for those of you out there, I have heard some of these stories before. One of the things that always strike me is whenever Ken introduces a character, their name is almost like lights up their character. Like, I think you need to be writing a novel. Like, I always say it's very Dickensonian. Charles Dickens, used to name his characters, Mrs. Goodwill, and she'd be a good person, that kind of thing. So you're in this, romantic period of time,
Yeah.
if you will.
I mean, it wasn't so romantic. It was hot and sweaty and stuff like that. But that's what we all did, right? And
yeah.
That's just what you did. We were all just working and, paying the bills and stuff like that. But people were helping each other.
Yeah.
Even it's hard to say this. We even had a compassionate landlord.
That's really funny.
Who
is that, those words go together? Look at that.
Yes, yeah. And I just want to say, the name of his company was called Sexy.
Oh, that's
it was CEXI. It was Cryogenic Experts Inc. I think it was.
And are you sure he was a landlord?
He was definitely the landlord. Yeah.
I don't know. That business might have been involved in something else.
When you wanted to rent a place, you just sat in his office and he looked you in the eye and he said, well, you got to come up with the first and last month, and and it's a 1-year deal, and you shook hands and you had a lease.
Well, but I think that ethos, that collaborative ethos, is something you've taken with you, right? I mean, I think even if you just look at education, education is organized around opportunity, for example.
Yeah.
One of the nicest things about the work that we do is that you sell a reformer to a studio. It's somebody's business. It's somebody's livelihood. It's somebody's career. And you're always looking for collaboration and cooperation. So that doesn't, all the joking aside, it's to me, it's very much a part of your DNA, So it doesn't surprise me that you found yourself there.
Yeah. Well, I always figure that I'm not very good at lots of things, and almost everybody that I talk to is better at what doing what they do than I am. So why don't I just listen to them?
That's very generous of you. Um,
You're one of them, Joy. Yes, yeah,
Thanks, Ken.
yeah.
Um, so let's sort of skip to get back to where we are today. We're growing globally.
Hmm.
I say to people, like, it's not a question of like one part of the world is growing at a time. It's that it's all simultaneously
Yeah.
growing, almost at a similar rate. Um, what do you see for the future? Like if you had the crystal ball and you were able to, shine it up, what would it look like?
Um, I think I mean, this sounds kind of selfish, but also makes a lot more sense. If we got men doing Pilates, that would make a huge difference because I think it would change their perspective on things, and I think it would help society a lot.
Now, I think that's another call out for world peace.
Yeah. I don't know if we're going to world peace, but at least we can make some progress, right?
Yeah, so we
We
can
just
make
need some
progress.
progress.
Yeah. So
So
more men. You,
more
you
more
think more
men
men,
doing
which I think
Pilates.
is
Yeah,
really we're seeing a
yeah.
lot more of that now.
This sounds kind of silly, but Joe Pilates wrote letters to President Kennedy and tried to get Pilates into the president's program for physical fitness.
Yes.
So I was part of that program doing sit-ups and push-ups and burpees and running and all that stuff. But I do think that one of the problems that we as humans have right now is we're designed to hunt and gather, right? And we're not doing enough of that stuff. And if we
Hmm.
were, we'd be a lot better off. And I think since we're not going to all be hunters and gatherers, and what we can do is we can exercise more. And if we get more people exercising, more people off the couch, that's going to make a huge difference. And I probably shouldn't say this, but I will say this: it doesn't have to be Pilates. It can be anything. I just think Pilates is one of the best ways that you can do it. But if we get people exercising and thinking
Right.
about that more, then I think that would be a huge improvement in the quality of life on Earth.
Speaking of Earth and sustainability, um, let's talk about the company. Uh, I remember, I don't know if I've ever told you the story, but I remember when you were in the old facility and I came for one of my educator trainings when I still had my studio in New York. And I remember going for a tour. And one of the things I was so taken with was as we walked through the building, you would say, look up, look at all the skylights. We barely put on any lights. And you talked about the boxes changing from wood to cardboard. Sustainability is important to you, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's become very much a part of your business practice.
Hmm.
What are some of the ways in which we practice that here at Balanced Body?
Yeah. So I mean, to me, I don't think sustainability it's only a big question for people that aren't thinking long term. If you think long term, it makes total 100% sense. It's like why do we not want to have a better earth for our children, right? Why would you not even think that, right?
Right.
It's like our parents thought about it for us. Why are we going to cheat our kids, right?
Right.
So it's an important thing, and there's no reason just to waste stuff, right? I've heard people in the past say, "Well, I can afford it, I can waste it." Well, you're just wasting it. It creates no value when you just throw it away, right? And so why not stick with things that make sense? Stick
Mm.
with things that generate more value and not just more waste, right? So it just kind of makes sense that if you're going to run a business, first of all, waste costs money, so why would you want to have waste? And so then it just becomes a convenience or a short-term fix for a short-term problem, and you're
Right.
not really thinking long-term, right?
Right.
So if you think long-term, then why would you not use solar power, right? Why would you not add insulation to your building? Why would you not have skylights? Because guess what? With skylights, most people's homes have natural light.
Mm.
Our reformers are going to be seen in natural light.
Right.
Why would you not have natural light in your factories so that people see it the same way that your customers see it,
Huh.
right?
Fantastic.
Why would you think about having packaging that's single use, right? It's just, if I do believe that right now there hasn't been a really good replacement for a plastic bag in terms of seeing what's on the inside of it. We'll figure that one out later. I'm sure there's going to be a
Stay
solution for that one.
tuned.
Yeah, but I mean, for the most part, you can do all these things. You can create products. You can do it you can do it efficiently, right?
Mm.
And you can create it so that what actually the single use thing, like a reformer, right? If it lasts forever, then it's really not something that gets disposed of, and it's not going to create landfill. But oh, guess what? By the way, most of the reformers that we built right now are all built out of sustainable materials that can be recycled
Uh-huh.
if you want to. But we actually build them so you can fix them and keep them going for another 20 years, which is not a good model for a capitalist business.
Yeah,
But
yeah, we don't.
I think it's just the right way to do it.
Yeah, yeah. We definitely don't build in obsolescence.
No, no.
How many solar panels do we have on the roof?
We now have 2,131. It's
Wow.
just almost a 1.1 megawatt array. It's one of the largest privately owned solar farms
Right.
in California.
Is it like number 8 nationwide? What was the? I'm trying to remember.
It's probably not 8 any longer. It was, I think, 8 in somewhere, but the people keep building them.
Yeah.
So, but it's one of the largest. Yeah. So people that have larger solar arrays are Sacramento Utilities, Sacramento Municipal District. I think Kaiser Permanente has a pretty good solar array.
All right. Are you still practicing?
Still am. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. I have a great Pilates instructor. Yes.
All right. Full disclosure, I'm his Pilates instructor at the moment. Yeah. Okay. Rapid fire question.
Go for it.
Okay. Ready? What's your favorite exercise and why?
I like the standing work just because I enjoy the balancing part of it, and there's a tiny bit of risk associated with that, which I love.
A tiny bit of risk. Okay, what's your least favorite Pilates exercise and why? Dangerous to tell your Pilates instructor, by the way.
How do I say this? It would be the hundreds, not because of the breathing part, but because I have a big head and it hurts to hold my head up forward a long period of time. There you go. You
There you
probably
go.
didn't know that.
I did, but
I'm getting better at it.
That you're
improving.
absolutely getting better at
Yes.
it, and you did have a significant injury to your neck. So
I did have this little thing with breaking my neck. Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. You might as well tell people how that happened.
It was not during Pilates.
But it was at a conference, was it not?
It was at an IDEA conference in San Diego,
Mhm.
and in the mornings we would go body surfing or hiking.
And you were with?
I was with Brent Anderson.
Yes.
Brent Anderson was at the conference. He wasn't with me at the time. Dave Littman. I was with who was I was with a couple other Balanced Body employees at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And we would go out in the morning, and I would go body surfing with some of the guys, and the other people would go running and stuff. And I was coming in after being out in the water for about 2 hours, and I was pretty cold, and a wave kind of caught me, and I kind of crashed, and I kind of bonked. But I walked out of the water.
You walked out of the water, right? And Brent was like, "Oh no, we're taking you to the hospital."
It was basically that, yeah.
Yeah.
But he held my hand during the whole thing, and it was my advocate, which was, I'll be eternally grateful to him for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, I would be surprised if the 100 wasn't a bit of a surprise,
Yeah.
challenge.
But I do have to tell you that I heard this over and over again, because at the time I think I was 52 or 53, and the doctors kept on saying to me, you're going to be all right because you're in such good condition to begin with.
Right.
And people that start off in good shape are the people that heal really well.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
What's your definition of Pilates?
Ooh. I would say it's a whole body workout. It focuses on core strength and focuses on flexibility and muscle tone. It's not something that adds bulk. Definition, yes, but not bulk. And I would say that it's what makes it really different is that there's such an emphasis on quality and not quantity.
Such an emphasis on quality and not quantity.
Yeah. And that's I think, and that's like one of the things I think that separates Pilates from almost everything else is you can take any movement and do a gross version of it, right? But if you do the Pilates version of it, it's a whole different exercise.
Yeah. Terrific. What do you hope for the Pilates community?
I want to see it grow. I just love this thing. I love what I do, and I love what I do because I love working with the people that I'm working with, and they're such a positive group of people, and they are out there wanting to improve on a regular basis. That's in their DNA, and that continuous improvement is something that is in manufacturing. It's critical. It's critical in how we run our lives. You know, when you're working with people that are continuously improving and always looking for, you know, a better way to do something, it just creates a really great atmosphere.
Okay. All right. Well, Ken, is there anything before we start to wrap up that you'd like to add?
I'm not so
Oh,
sure.
I have one for you.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to put him on the spot. So, one of the things about Ken Endelman that you guys don't know is he's a real jokester. Do you have a good
Oh,
one for us to take us
oh,
out?
good joke.
Hmm.
All right. What else? Two knees and swims?
What has two knees and
A tunny
swims?
fish.
A toonie fish.
Yes. I
Fantastic.
can tell some dad jokes.
He's got them.
Why didn't the skeleton cross the road?
Why did the skeleton cross the road?
He didn't have the guts. It's an anatomical joke.
At least it was clean.
Yes.
So I think we should stop while we're ahead.
I think we should stop while we're ahead too.
All right. So thank you for joining us at Pilates Perspectives. I'm Joy Paleo, and I'm here with Ken Endelman. And I think now you can understand why not only is he a CEO of Balanced Body, but he is a RNG, a really nice guy. Thanks, Ken. So happy to have you.
Thank you, Joy. It's a pleasure. It's always a pleasure.